Imagine this: sprawling acres and endless horizon, all yours for the price of a beat-up sedan. A wild thought, isn't it? The kind of dream that flickers in the back of your mind, owning a piece of this earth, a legacy, maybe even a sanctuary. But what if I told you that the cheapest land on this planet, truly vast, wide open, and almost unbelievably affordable, just sits there? Empty, unwanted, and in some cases virtually untouched by human ambition. It's a strange kind of paradox, dirt cheap dirt that nobody, and I mean seems to want. Why is that? Well, that's the billion-dollar question, or in this case, the couple $100 an acre question, we're here to figure out. You can't deny the allure. In a world where a tiny patch of ground in a bustling city can cost a king's ransom, the idea of owning not just square feet but square for peanuts, it's intoxicating. We're talking about places where an acre might set you back less than a fancy dinner. Think countries like Paraguay, where rural land can supposedly be snagged for around $324 an acre, or parts of the rural United States, where desert expanses whisper promises of solitude for maybe $250 an acre. Even in Europe, you hear these whispers. Properties in Romania or Moldova, an entire rural home for under $10,000. Sounds like a fantasy, right? It's the ultimate escapist dream, a blank canvas for whatever you want to build, or so it seems. Now this isn't just about nabbing a bargain, it's about freedom, space, getting back to something primal. The internet is flooded with listings and articles practically screaming cheapest land, affordable acreage, your own piece of paradise for pennies. They prey on that deep-seated human desire for something tangible, something in a world that feels increasingly digital. They paint this beautiful picture of idyllic self-sufficiency, peaceful seclusion, an investment that surely can only go up in value. But like with anything that sounds too good to be true, the glossy brochure rarely tells the whole story. That cheap price tag? It's often just the first payment on a long list of surprises you really didn't sign up for. One of the first, and let's be honest, most brutal truths about a lot of this ultra-cheap land is how incredibly isolated it is. We're not talking about a quiet countryside retreat a few hours from the city. Oh no. We're talking about parcels of Earth so remote, so cut off from anything resembling civilization they might as well be on another planet. Take the Gran Chaco region in Paraguay. It's this vast, semi-arid lowland, one of South America's last great wildernesses. Land there is dirt cheap, but it's a frontier in every sense of the word. Most of it is characterized by a harsh climate and a serious lack of basic services. And this isn't just a Paraguay thing. In the United States, you can buy huge tracts of desert land in states like Arizona or New Mexico for a song. But what does that song actually get you? Often it's land with no roads, or if there are roads, they're little more than dirt tracks that become impassable after a good rain. No electricity lines for miles, meaning you're staring down the barrel of expensive off-grid solutions like solar, which can be pretty unreliable depending on your needs and, the weather. No city water, so you'd have to drill a well and expensive gamble that might not even hit water you can actually use. And high-speed internet? Forget about it. You'd be lucky to get a phone signal. The cost of just to your cheap land can be astronomical. Building an access road, even a basic one, can run into tens of thousands of dollars. Trying to get utility lines extended, if that's even an option, could cost you $50 to $100, or even more. Suddenly that $300 an acre bargain isn't looking so appealing when you realize it might take hundreds of thousands just to make it livable, let alone productive. This isolation isn't just inconvenient, it's a massive barrier to development, to living, to doing pretty much anything beyond just standing on your lonely patch of unwanted earth. Alright, let's say you actually manage to conquer the isolation. You build your road, you drill your well, you get your solar panels humming. Now what? Well, another thing these super affordable land areas often have in common is a near-total lack of economic opportunity. These are often the regions that development forgot, the places industry skipped over, where there's little to no population growth. So if you're buying land hoping it'll appreciate in value, you might be in for a very long wait. Moldova, for instance, often gets mentioned for having some of the cheapest real estate in Europe, with rural homes available for incredibly low prices, but it's also one of Europe's poorest countries. It has an underdeveloped economy, and its path to joining the European Union is, let's say, complicated, making any investment feel pretty speculative. While there have been some reports recently about Moldova's property market picking up, especially in the capital Chisinau, mainly due to things like housing shortages and an influx of refugees, this doesn't automatically mean boom times for remote, cheap rural land. In fact, the very things that make the land cheap, like poor infrastructure and weak local economies, are the exact same things that choke off growth and opportunity. Think about it. If there are no jobs, no industry, and no one new moving into the area, who's going to buy your land if you decide to sell? Who's going to rent it? What local economy is there to support any kind of business you might dream of starting? Cheap land in an economic desert just doesn't offer much fertile ground for your finances to grow. That dream of a thriving homestead or a profitable farm can wither pretty quickly when you smack into the harsh reality of no markets, no labor, and no businesses to support you. So the location's a challenge and the economy's a bit of a dead end. Surely at least the land is straightforward. Yeah, not always. The world of cheap land is often a minefield of legal headaches and ownership uncertainties. In some countries, the idea of a clear, undisputed land title, that can be a luxury, not something you can take for granted. Bureaucracy can be a maze, and the process of actually registering your purchase can be bogged down with delays and all sorts of hidden fees. Then there are restrictions on foreign ownership, another big hurdle. While countries like Paraguay and the United States are relatively open about foreigners buying land, many others have really strict rules. Some nations might flat out prohibit foreigners from owning agricultural land, or they might limit how big a parcel a foreigner can buy. Others might let foreigners lease land but not own it outright, or they might require you to make purchases through local companies or citizens, which just adds more layers of risk and complication. Imagine sinking your savings into a plot of land, only to find out your claim to it is shaky, or you're tangled up in a legal battle with someone you've never heard of who also claims to own it, or that the government can just take your land back with barely any notice or compensation. These aren't wild, made-up scenarios in certain parts of the world. That dream of ownership can morph into a nightmare of legal bills and a whole lot of stress pretty fast. This little trip into the world's unwanted lands is uncovering some pretty stark truths, isn't it? If you're finding this exploration as eye-opening as I am, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you want more deep dives into the hidden corners and curious tales of our planet, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Often there's a very simple, very blunt reason why land is cheap. Mother Nature herself has decided it's problematic. These aren't some undiscovered Edens just waiting for you. They're often landscapes locked in a constant battle with environmental extremes. We're talking about land prone to relentless drought, which makes trying to farm anything a fool's errand unless you're ready for massive and costly irrigation. Or on the flip side, you might find land in floodplains that looks lush and fertile one month, only to be completely underwater the next. Think about those cheap desert plots in the American Southwest. Affordable, sure, but they're arid, and water is a huge issue. Or consider mountainous terrain that's beautiful to look at but incredibly difficult and expensive to build on or grow anything on. What you can actually with lands like these is often severely limited, which naturally drags down their value. You might dream of tilling the soil and living off the fat of the land, only to discover the soil is thin, nutrient poor, or maybe even contaminated. If you even think to do an environmental assessment, it can uncover a whole host of issues that make the land totally unsuitable for your plans, or worse, a potential health hazard. That cheap price tag, it might just be nature's way of putting up a warning sign. Beyond all the physical and economic challenges, there's often an even more unsettling reason why certain lands stay stubbornly cheap. They're located in regions plagued by instability. This can be anything from high crime rates that make just feeling safe a constant worry, to deep-seated political unrest that could explode at any moment, to outright armed conflict. Investing in land, no matter how cheap it is, in a country with an unstable government or a volatile political situation, that's an enormous gamble. Property rights can be incredibly fragile in these kinds of environments. Your ownership could be challenged or just wiped out by a new regime. The rule of law might be weak, meaning you have little or no way to fight back if your land is encroached upon or even seized. And of course, there's the very real threat to your personal safety and well-being. The dream of a peaceful escape evaporates pretty quickly if you're constantly worried about theft, violence, or society just collapsing around you. No amount of acreage can make up for a lack of security and peace of mind. These are the kinds of factors that those tempting online listings often gloss over, but they are absolutely critical things to consider. Perhaps the sneakiest thing about cheap land is that the initial purchase price is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole legion of hidden and ongoing costs that many optimistic buyers just don't see coming. Property taxes, for one. They might be low when you first buy, but they can go up, and they're a financial obligation that never goes away. Then there's maintenance. Even if you're not developing the land, you might still need to manage overgrown vegetation, keep up any existing fences or access routes, or deal with less savory issues like illegal dumping or squatters. And what about potential liabilities? What if the land you bought comes with an environmental cleanup order because of something a previous owner did? What if there are existing easements or right-of-way disputes you had no idea about? The legal fees to sort out these kinds of messes can quickly become way more than what you paid for the land in the first place. And if you plan to develop, the costs for permits, surveys, soil tests, septic system installations, which can be surprisingly pricey, especially if the soil doesn't perk well, meaning it doesn't drain properly, and getting utilities connected can be absolutely staggering. There's one YouTube creator, Matt from Diesel Creek, who reportedly spent $52,000 just to get power to his property, and he did a lot of the prep work himself. That cheap plot of land can quickly turn into a financial black hole, relentlessly sucking your money dry. Let's zoom in on a couple of the places we've mentioned. Paraguay's Chaco region is a perfect example. You can buy land there for what seems like pocket change, sometimes as low as a few $100s an acre. But this huge area is often described as incredibly remote with a really harsh climate. While there's a bit of a push for infrastructure development, and some parts are suitable for cattle ranching, which has unfortunately led to a lot of deforestation, massive tracts of land remain underdeveloped simply because of these tough conditions and the lack of basic services. It's a place where the fact that only about 4% of Paraguay's population lives in 60% of its land area really tells you a lot about how livable it is for most people. Then there's Moldova. While it's often talked about as having the cheapest real estate in Europe, especially rural homes, the economic realities are pretty stark. It's a nation struggling with an underdeveloped economy and the complicated business of trying to get closer to the European Union. And while its capital, Chisinau, has seen some growth in the property market, this is often tied to specific city-based factors and doesn't necessarily mean good things for the cheapest, most remote rural plots. For foreign investors, trying to navigate the legal system and bureaucracy can also throw up a lot of unexpected challenges. That dream of a quaint European farmhouse for a song can sour pretty fast when you're faced with limited economic prospects and big gaps in infrastructure. These aren't just isolated stories. From arid desert plots in the US to remote corners of Africa or other parts of South America, the story is often the same. The land is cheap for a whole collection of compelling and often deal-breaking reasons. We've wandered through some of the most challenging and frankly undesirable landscapes on Earth, all to understand why the cheapest land stays unwanted. What's the single most surprising reason you've heard today? What particular pitfall would make you run screaming from a bargain plot? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think. So that dream of owning vast stretches of land for the price of an old car, it does exist. But as we've seen, it's a dream that comes with a whole lot of strings attached, pitfalls, and often some pretty harsh realities. The cheapest land in the world is rarely a hidden gem just waiting for a polish. More often, it's a mirror reflecting some really profound challenges. It's unwanted because it's isolated, a battle to get to, and even harder to make livable. It's undesired because it sits in economic backwaters, offering very little hope for prosperity or a return on your investment. It stays untouched because it's tangled up in legal knots, or because nature herself has made it too hostile, too unforgiving. It's avoided because it lies in the shadow of instability, or because that initial cheap price is just the entry fee to a never-ending cycle of hidden costs and liabilities. The allure of cheap land is powerful. It taps into that primal urge for space and ownership. But the price tag on the deed is the full story. The real cost is measured in access, in resources, in opportunity, in safety, and sometimes, let's be honest, in your sanity. It's a stark reminder that in the world of real estate, just like in so much of life, if something seems too good to be true, it almost certainly is. The cheapest land may be out there waiting, but the more important question is, now that you know the truth, would you want it?